Hi everyone, and welcome to ESN Clear's FY24 annual general meeting today. Thanks so much for joining us today via Zoom. For those who don't know me, I'm Johnny Feng, one of the directors here at ESN Clear and part of the day-to-day operations team. I'll be your host for today's session. First off, thank you again for making the time to join us. Just a quick note, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available to any shareholders who couldn't make it today. We'll send out an email with the video access details once it's ready, as per previous years. There's no voting on the agenda today, so no proxies were required. It's just after 11 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australian Eastern Standard Time, and we've got a quorum, so let's officially kick off the meeting. Before we dive in, just a quick few bits of housekeeping. In the AGM notice, we've sent out what you find in the info about Zoom access and utilization, etc. Especially if you've got questions, there is a Q&A panel that you can access. We'll be collecting these questions as we go along during the meeting. Since sending the invitation, we've also received several common questions from our investors. Many of these will be covered during the meeting or in the Q&A section of today. And of course, if you still have questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to us directly. Our FY24 annual report has been sent out to all our shareholders. If you have any trouble accessing it, just let us know. Because of its size, we've had to use an online version. But again, if you need any other format, we're happy to help out. I'm pleased to share that our full board is with us today. Professor Andrew Coates, our chair of the board, Leo de Bruin, our CEO and exec director, Matt McNamara, non-exec director, and myself, Johnny Feng, exec director and company secretary. Here's the flow of today. We'll kick things off with a board address from Andrew, then followed by Leo taking us through the director's report, and then I will wrap things up with a Q&A section with the most common questions received from investors. So with that, let's start with our chair of the board address from Professor Andrew Coates. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. I'll keep this fairly short. It was suggested maybe I could give an update on major developments in this field of cardiology where ESN is focusing, and that's around some diseases in the broad spectrum of heart failure, but they're heart muscle disorders. And I think that the most important development is a considerable shift within cardiovascular drug development towards going for a more precision medicine approach. Historically, we devised drugs that were designed to treat very large proportions of the population. High blood pressure can affect, 20, 30, 40% of the population. Abnormal blood lipids like hypercholesterol can affect, many tens of percent of the population. Even conditions like diabetes and heart failure can affect substantial populations. But we've realized, perhaps learning from our oncology colleagues, that there may be value in a much more precision approach where we identify much smaller segments of the population who get a really exquisitely good response, and hence payers are much more willing to pay very large prices for drugs that are targeted, that they're not wasted on people that don't get a benefit. So we're now not looking for treatments for 30% of the population. We're defining, particular types of disorders that respond differently to drugs and identifying the drug that really is perfectly matched for the disease. And I'd just like to give you 3 recent examples from the field of cardiology. Next slide, Johnny. The first is the case of a particular form of cardiomyopathy or heart muscle disease called amyloid, particularly transthyretin amyloid. And this is a relatively rare condition that I, as a clinical cardiologist, my colleagues really didn't know how to treat. And people have developed drugs that precisely targeted at the individual cause of this. It's a rarer condition, so it classifies as an orphan disorder in the US. And as recently as a few years ago, we started getting drugs approved for this particular form of cardiomyopathy that was previously untreatable. We've now got several agents, as you see there, all of which commanded very high prices, but were so targeted that there wasn't any waste, that it wasn't like hundreds of thousands of patients were getting this. It was really those who benefit. Next slide. The next example was another rare cardiomyopathy, in this case hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, that has a condition called obstruction, where the muscle in the heart gets abnormally thick and it actually impedes the heart ejecting blood out. And that a novel agent, mavacamten, was shown to improve the symptoms and exercise tolerance in this condition, the first effective treatment for this other than surgery or defibrillator. And that was approved just a couple of years ago now and has revolutionized the field, because now we got precise mechanisms of action for precise, somewhat rare conditions. So this was also an orphan indication. So it gets quicker regulatory path and higher prices. And the next one is it's a slightly unusual example, but it's analysis I led of a major clinical trial sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim called the Emperor Preserve trial. And it looked at the SGLT2 and empagliflozin for the half of heart failure with a small heart, so-called HFpEF. It was the first agent to be proven to improve clinical outcomes in that condition. But we recently conducted analysis looking at all the patients in this trial with a simple measurement from echocardiogram that could detect the presence of diastolic dysfunction. That's an abnormality of the heart's ability to relax. And we see that in echo scans. They're not always there. But what we show in this analysis, up in the top left, the 2/3 of patients who didn't have one of those abnormalities really didn't get a lot of benefit. But on the right, those who had one possible abnormality had a significant benefit. And the bottom left, if they had two of these abnormalities or more, they had a dramatic benefit. So it's another example where we can find a subset of patients with an exquisitely good response. And that's going to this concept of precision medicine, which is exactly ESN Cleer's approach in developing our preferred agent for rarer types of cardiomyopathy where we're offering indications. So I'd now like to pass over to Leo, who can go the really profound success that ESN Cleer has had over the last few months and looks a very positive future. So Leo.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Leo de Bruin, and I'm the CEO of ESN Cleer. Today gives us the opportunity to share with you the high-level strategy and where we're heading and milestones reached. Next slide, please. Thank you. ESN Cleer is developing a first-in-class treatment for a specific set of cardiomyopathies to aid in the prevention of heart failure. We have an ongoing agreement with Pacific Agvet to license some of our intellectual property. Our drug is a reformulated novel drug in orphan indications, which makes it de-risked. It's got a high value composition of matter patent in an area of high demand with unmet medical need, including the option for a precision medicine approach. This enables accelerated pathway to market, and we therefore conclude it's a late-stage company risk with early-stage company upside. We've secured 3 years of funding to maximize the valuation of the company and minimize the risk preparing the company for a trade sale. Our interim mice study results were very positive, and we had another US patent granted. In the meantime, we're also progressing with an application for an industry growth program, which could cover up to 50% of our commercialization expenses. Next slide, please, Johnny. Thank you. We believe in doing things right, even if it takes a little bit longer, to ensure that we don't have to redo anything and waste more money and time. The critical valuation inflection for the company is the first in-man safety and efficacy data within about 2 years. There are precursor milestones within the next financial year, such as a positive outcome after a pre-IND meeting, multiple orphan drug designations, the final mice study readout, and the chemistry product ready for clinical trials. Next slide, please, Johnny. Big pharmaceutical companies have a specific landscape they have to navigate in the most effective way possible. The patent cliff means a lot of their drug patents have run out, which enables generics to enter the market. The Inflation Reduction Act focuses on drugs that's been in the market long enough to get a regulated price squeeze. And Big Pharma's internal R&D has declined significantly globally, i.e. they are developing less in-house and acquiring more drug assets from external companies such as ESN. Now, these opportunities impact ESN in the following ways. With new orphan drugs, we have new patents. New patents give us 20 years patent protection. Our drug's price is not subject to the IRA because the drug has not been in the market yet. We also have market exclusivity in the US of 7 years and 10 years in Europe. We get access to the orphan drug tax credit with some clinical research subsidies available to us as well. We also have the potential prescription drug user fee exemption of about $3 million US. And all of this gives us the potential for a fast-track approval. On the M&A side, this could mean first in man within 2 years and a single pivotal trial, which boosts our valuation significantly. Orphan drug market continues to grow, and it's currently estimated to reach $270 billion US in sales by 2028. Orphan drugs are 20% of the overall prescription drug market, with its market share doubling over the last 10 years. 50% of drugs approved by the FDA in the past 5 years were orphan drugs, and single indication drugs, such as the one currently under development in ESN, is exempted from the US Inflation Reduction Act. So in conclusion, from my report, we have funding secured, our testing is going well, and we're on track for a high-value trade sale. Thank you very much. Over to you, Johnny.
Well, thanks, Leo. Now on to our final segment of the Q&A section of the day. As I mentioned earlier, we've had a number of questions sent in by our investors, many of which are common questions that have already been addressed. However, I'll touch on a few key themes that came up. Starting with the FY24 financials, which was included in our annual report you've received. We saw some variances in spending between FY23 and 24. Notably, the capital raising expenses increased comparatively year on year. We had, during the last financial year, FY24, we have had to bring in more external support to extend and broaden our reach to our investors locally and abroad, which includes sophisticated and high net worth individuals and family offices, both here in Australia and overseas. Whereas we have reduced our costs in R&D and IP in the reporting period, while we continue to develop in both areas of the business, we've managed to obtain extended payment terms with our partners, which helped us reducing our costs for the year. On the licensing front, as Leah mentioned, we have shared back in February, we've started generating revenue by segregating our IP portfolio. We currently have 2 out licenses in place. One covers the non-cardiovascular disease developments. The other in the development of an AI platform focused on drug molecule discovery. Both agreements are aligned to our strategy, while our focus remains and doesn't conflict with our core cardiovascular development strategy and pathway. Looking forward, based on our continued out-licensed revenue, we estimate reaching potential profitability by FY26-27. As our lead candidate, ESN TX005, hits key milestones, we're also planning to expand our pipeline with additional indications within the cardiovascular space. But of course, our bigger picture strategy remains focused on potential M&A, trade transactions that we believe will deliver the strongest return for our shareholders. We have been actively working on this both here in Australia and internationally, with the aim of lining up potential M&A events around FY26-27 as we achieve our key milestones. We've had several questions about the US. Of course, it's all over the news and media about what's going on in the US and how it affects global industries and multiple industries. And while things are a bit uncertain, our approach remains steady. Our core strategy centers on IP export, which aligns well with big farms currently pushing to bring manufacturing back to the US. We believe this can be an advantage for ESN Cleer, not only to engage with the US and global markets, but also to push potential benefits from trade conditions as they evolve. Last but not least, our Exec Director, Mac McNamara, will share some insights on healthcare capital markets.
Thanks, Johnny, and apologies, everyone. You can see I am in an office, but I've got very poor reception, so that I don't drop off, I'm going to go off video. So in addition to what Johnny has just said, in these interesting times, I thought we'd make a comment on the healthcare markets and give you an update. Equity capital markets in 2024, the health sector underperformed the broader market by nearly 25%, and it was driven by weak earnings and election uncertainties. However, over $50 billion in capital was raised, with biotech leading through M&A and regulatory milestones. IPO activity remained low but showed some promise. In 2025, the outlook is more optimistic. Biotech ECM may see fewer but larger deals supported by creative execution strategies and improved liquidity management. Healthcare private equity deal value soared to $115 billion in 2024, the second highest on record. North America, unsurprisingly, dominated with 65% of global deal value. The market benefited from large transactions exceeding $5 billion and a reduction in interest rates late in 2024. Looking ahead, plateauing deal multiples and growing tradable assets suggest better alignment between buyers and sellers. Increased pressure for liquidity may drive sponsor exits, while favourable macroeconomic conditions support continued investment. Having said that, the pre-IPO market is weak, as many investors are still holding pre-IPO investments from the last few years. Some sector challenges. Despite recovery trends, the healthcare industry faces ongoing challenges over and above the Trump FDA cutbacks and introduction of tariffs, such as labour shortages, inflationary pressures, constrained reimbursement growth, and shifting payer dynamics. These factors continue to impact EBITDA margins across segments like Medicare Advantage and Medicaid. Based on Trump's recent executive actions and policy priorities in his second term, his administration is having a significant impact on the global healthcare market. I'm going to give you 5 examples. Trump has reinstated and expanded the global gag rule, banning federal funds to international organisations that provide abortion-related information. Secondly, shift in drug pricing policy. The administration has rolled back policies aimed at limiting drug spending by Medicaid and Medicare, potentially affecting global pharmaceutical markets. This may lead to higher US drug prices and could influence international pricing strategies. Thirdly, changes to healthcare transparency. Trump has issued executive orders focusing on healthcare price transparency, which could influence global trends in healthcare pricing and patient empowerment. Fourthly, restructuring of public health agencies. The administration's embrace of Project 2025 recommendations suggest potential reorganisation of federal health agencies, which could affect global health partnerships and research collaborations. And finally, shift in research funding priorities. Cuts to agencies like the National Institute of Health, or the NIH, could impact global biomedical research collaborations and advancement. So these changes suggest a more inward-focused approach to healthcare policy, which could lead to reduced US involvement in global health initiatives and potentially reshape international healthcare markets and priorities. Now, with respect to the FDA, in March and April this year, because the FDA was an area that everyone was most concerned about, the global biotech sector felt the harsh effects of tariff uncertainties, NIH funding cuts, and perhaps most notably staff cuts of 3,500 out of the total FDA pool of 18,000 personnel, leading to the US biotech index falling 19% year to date to a low on the 7th of April. The index has since bounced back after the new FDA Commissioner, Marty Makary, allayed some fears regarding the FDA in multiple interviews. Notably, Makary made the following comments. One, that the FDA personnel cuts, while not perfect, were not to scientists, reviewers, or inspectors, but rather communication, lobbyists, and IT staff. So that's good. This corroborates feedback from many ASX companies advising FDA engagements in recent months have been conducted per agreed timelines, although we are aware of a few US companies that have reported some delays. Secondly, improving the FDA's post-marketing surveillance capabilities to reduce pre-approval clinical trial requirements in certain instances, particularly in very rare diseases, via a new approval pathway for drugs with a scientifically plausible mechanism. And thirdly, removing animal testing requirements to reduce preclinical requirements to be more in line with other agencies. In summary, Makary appears to be a relatively pragmatic commissioner, unlikely to plunge the FDA into chaos. The US remains the most important market for ASX-listed drug developers, hence this degree of regulatory stability is clearly welcomed. Basically, the healthcare market is too big and important to allow it to suffer severely. Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Matt. Before we conclude our meeting for the day, any final words, Andrew?
Just like to thank the management team for really an excellent year. I think the huge progress, as you heard from Leo's report. We've now got really effective licenses, and that's given us a clear pathway to further develop our lead compound. Very attractive animal model results coming through, which I hope we'll be able to share in more detail in future. And I think there's a good rosy outlook. We depend heavily on Matt's advice on the capital markets, and we thank our loyal group of investors for their support for us over this period. I think we've got a very good year ahead of us. So thank everyone for attending.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
This concludes our AGM for the FY 2024. Please let us know if you've got any other questions or if you would like more information. As always, please look out for our further updates throughout the following months in your email mailbox. Thank you again, all the shareholders, as mentioned by Andrew, for all your support. And this meeting is now closed at the time 11:25. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.